Hello there. Hello, mattphilleo here in the studio in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. Just like to welcome you again to another Teaching Tuesday session, painting a large acrylic portrait with glazes. This is part number 3, and I'm excited to be here. I was in an art show over the weekend. In fact, I was setting up for that show, and it pretty much took me most of last week, just paintings to frame, signs to get done, um, biography, to update, and all these different things, business cards, the whole 9 yards. And so, as you notice, I haven't gotten a lot of stuff done on this painting. However, it's going to be progressing pretty rapidly after this point and up till the end of the month, because I've given myself a deadline that I need to get this done by the end of October. So anyway, just want to give people a chance to log in here and join in. Yeah, so what I'll be doing here is just working on this today. I'm going to be concentrating on painting the people mostly, getting some nuances within the face, painting the figures a little bit, the clothing, and so that's going to be my goal. I just want to demonstrate the glazing technique, and if you've never seen the glazing technique before, that's using acrylic in a series of layers, and so we build up color and depth by mixing a clear medium with the paint. And so you can see that I have it on my palette right here, matte medium. And that's kind of the lifeblood of this painting technique. And then I'll mix all my other colors into that, and we just paint with a series of translucent layers. Now, if you've seen my videos before, you know the technique, but it gives you a lot of flexibility, allows you to be able to basically you can customize and you can paint over your details and not lose them in the mix. So that's just a fantastic way to go. I'm just going to check and see, make sure everything's set up on my comments here. Make sure I have the right video link. Sometimes the live stream isn't always the way you want it to be. We're just going to check that and make sure I'm on the right video. I was having some technical difficulties. And it looks like, yep, this is going here. All right, we got Mona online. Hello, Mona. Nice to see you here. How are you doing today? The room's a little bit empty today, but that's all right. We're going to have a lot of fun and just do some painting. Like I said, I was doing an art show over the weekend and spent most of the week just getting set up for that. So my studio was in a little bit of disarray yesterday, but I got it cleaned up a little. Just doing some framing and matting prints and setting up signage for everything, and just a lot of loose ends to take care of. But it was a great show. I mean, I had a fantastic time chatting with people, sold some prints, got some commissions, and of course the conversations are the best part. But anyway, Mona, how are you doing today? I see you were working on a couple new projects. You got a pet portrait finished. And what else are you working on? I think the chat in here isn't quite as responsive as Facebook's chat, but anyway, well, I'm gonna let you respond to that. I'm gonna get started here, and I might have sent out the wrong. Well, I sent out the right link yesterday on my email for this for this live broadcast, but I was writing so fast, I guess I didn't put down, the date. And I would think people would remember it was on Tuesdays, but maybe not. So that might have been my bad. But anyway, I'm going to get started here in just a bit. I'm just going to ask a quick blessing, and I'm going to get working on this. So, Father, I ask you to bless this painting process and help me to teach this process well, the glazing technique, and bless the students, everyone that's watching, the people that'll watch later. I just pray you bless them in their painting, in their studio, that you'd give them opportunities to paint the things that would encourage others, glorify you, and just be a blessing. So I ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so I'm going to get started here. What I wanted to work on today primarily was their faces and then also their clothing a little bit. And because I was working, on my show yesterday, I didn't have a lot of time to actually paint on this. So things haven't really changed a whole lot since last week. But after this point, they will be changing pretty soon. So just looking back at the screen, I see we have Patty online and we have Kim. Hello, nice to see you here. So anyway, I'm going to get started because we're already 5 minutes in. And I have a few colors. I was actually, before we started the broadcast, I was just mixing some colors for some skin tones on the face. And by the way, if you haven't done so, I'd encourage you to register for this class. You'll see the link at the bottom of the video and the information that's about the video. And if you click that link, you can go ahead and register, and then I'll be doing a couple of bonus videos using a higher resolution camcorder and zooming in more on the face and getting some of the details. And that'll be only available within that class. So if you register and just share it with a couple of your friends who get access to this class, which will have all of these lessons on YouTube uploaded there at realisticacrylic.com, and you'll be able to watch, without distractions, ads, or anything like that. Plus, you get all the bonus videos as well, which I'll probably have a few. So I'd encourage you to do that. And anyway, we're going to get started here. So Mona says she didn't get the email. Okay, I'll have to double check that, why that didn't go out. But anyway, we got a few people here, and technical difficulties sometimes can affect online classes like this, but we just keep rolling, and hopefully next week I'll have those glitches nipped in the bud. Anyway, so I have the man's face here. Now this is a photo of him when he was younger, and the client wanted me to paint this with them looking younger, even though the main photo I'm working from shows them quite a bit older. Not quite a bit, but probably middle age or close to that. They want it looking like they're younger. So they gave me a bunch of reference photos of when they were younger. And that's what I want to work on here primarily, is use like this reference photo to work on his face a little bit. And so what I'm going to do is take some raw umber dark. And if you have any questions as I go along here, just leave them in the chat box and I'll be sure to answer those. So I'm going to take raw umber dark, and I think actually just that color is all I need. And I just mixed it with some matte medium, about 50-50. I don't want it to be too light, enough to make a difference here. And then I'm just going to go over his eyes and darken them, because that needs to happen eventually. So I'm going to darken his eyes, being careful to get this to cover the whole area very smoothly. I'm also going to bring some of this darkness out into the eyelash area. And you can notice that this brush here is not thin at all. I mean, this is a pretty thick brush. This is like a size 10, so it's nothing special, but nevertheless you can get some really good detail just by kind of twisting it at the end. When you put the brush into the mixer, you twist it and get it to a nice point, and then you just barely graze it across the surface. You're using your hand, resting your hand on the canvas. And this is something you can't do with oil painting, because you would mess up your whole painting, you'd smear it. But with acrylic, it's fantastic because you can just set your hand right on there and just keep that stability, and then you can just graze it across the surface. I mean, I guess I would say it's probably similar to a technique you'd use when you're drawing, but you know, for me, I drew for many years before I learned to paint. And so I take some of my, I guess, my drawing skills into my painting, and I do it somewhat the same way. So anyway, so I'm just grazing across, darkening his eyebrows, being careful to kind of lift up the pressure as I get towards the center of his face so I can get a little bit of that gradation look. You know, and how eyebrows, they don't stop like usually abruptly, but they kind of blend out towards the middle of the face, towards the nose, and that's what we're trying to capture. Now, since I have this color handy, I'm going to take a little bit of ultramarine blue and add that to the mix, and then I'm just going to darken in his hair. Now, in the original reference photo, the main photo I'm working from, he has silver hair. Like I said, he's older in that one, but I'm going to make him look like he's younger, and I'm just going to darken his hair, and I'm going to have to kind of imagine what it might look like, because the in the photo, it's just a big block of white. There's not really any shading on it. But I imagine that, you know, if his hair is parted on this side, it's going to be catching the light in a certain area, and most likely it's going to be more towards this side of the part, because in the photo I can see the light is coming more from the right side, and so I want to make sure then the light on the hair corresponds to that. Now, again, like I said, I have to invent this. I'm trying to just use some common sense and experience from the past, figuring out where to keep that highlight on his hair. And I'm just grazing the brush across the surface, by the way. Now, if you have any questions on this, go ahead and put it in the chat box, and I'll be sure to answer those as we get farther along in the process here. All right, now I'm going to be darkening underneath his visor here. And I think his hair actually does come down over the visor a little bit, so I need to begin to suggest that. So that will have to start kind of faint. Just a few strands coming down is all we need, just to make it look as if his hair has some thickness to it and some weight. Maybe a strand coming down like that. I'm trying to look at the reference photo, see if I can maybe get an idea what that might look like. I'll just fade this a little bit by adding more matte medium to the mix. Yeah, just a little bit of hair. Very faded. Okay. I'm going to take the same color and now work it over on the other side, on the woman's face. And I'm going to darken in up here, getting just that little section of hair that's sticking up above her visor. Just darkening that in. And then I'm going to also let's see if I can pull up her photo here. That's the main photo I'm working from for her. So that would be the reference photo of when she was younger. I'm going to get a quick sip of water here. And I want to darken a few spots like under her chin, because her chin and her whole jawline, that whole part of her face is going to be casting a shadow over her hair. And so I want to capture that. And then darkening on this side a little bit, trying to follow what I see in the photo. You know, the lighting might be a little different, but it's pretty close because it's ambiguous light. You know, it's just light that's coming from wherever. It's not like it's strong sunlight or a strong light illuminated by a light bulb or something. So I get a little bit of shading right at the top here by her visor, and we'll just imagine that there's kind of a highlight on her hair in the middle. All right, and we'll go and take a little bit of raw umber dark. It's just basically raw umber dark with nothing else in it, and I'll darken her eyes a bit more. And we soften it up. I don't want it quite that dark right away. Trying to make everything develop at the same level. So I want to darken the eyes, but I don't want them to stand out so much that, you know, they just look strange because they're too dark in comparison with everything else. But however, as you're working, you will hit a few times when your painting hits an awkward stage. Has anybody ever had an awkward stage in their paintings? Yeah, if you hit that, that can be a little frustrating because things just look strange, but you have to kind of stick with the process and just keep painting, and eventually things will turn out all right. That's just basically how it goes sometimes as you're painting. Some areas will be too dark in relationship to other areas, and that'll throw off the likeness. But if you just stick with it and keep on adding the right values to the right area, eventually it's going to turn out. So I try not to get freaked out if I have something in my painting looking a little goofy. I know eventually it's going to turn out all right. You know, if I've prayed and asked God for help and I just stick with the process, it's got to work out. So now I want to add, let's see, a little bit to her mouth. I'm going to darken these little crevices on the side that show, you know, that she's smiling. And let's add this raw umber dark maybe to a little bit of naphthalene red. Mix the two together, and then we'll darken this area, her lips. And this is going to be more in shadow because that's the upper lip. And let's see, hopefully I have that distance between her nose and her mouth okay. I think it's close. But again, it's going to take some careful measuring and balancing against the reference photo. What I'll have to do as I get closer in the process to really make sure I have this likeness correct. And we'll just take a little bit of this kind of naphthalene red mix on the side, add a little bit of raw sienna, and I'm going to see if I can add a nice little shadow on this side. I don't know, maybe that'll pick up a little more of a reddish color because of her jacket, and so I have to keep that in mind and get this a little more to the reddish side. All right, we'll just add a little bit more here to this side. A shadow that's kind of influenced by the color of her jacket. And there we go. That adds a little warmth to her face, but there's a lot more skin tones we'll have to add. And we could actually go in and go over this whole part of her face. Add a little bit more warmth there. Imagine again that is picking up some of the color from her jacket. If that ends up being a little too intense, a little too orangish, I can always tone it down. But I think some of that color needs to be in there. Okay. Well, I don't know. Are there any questions at all? I don't see any questions, so we just have a very small group today, and that's okay. I'm just going to keep on painting then, and we'll have a little more painting time this time around. Yeah, I think it was the fact that I didn't get that extra email out. You know, just with the show, it kind of cut into some of this time for preparing for the class as far as getting out my communications. So I didn't get out the extra email I usually send out in the morning, and then the one I sent out yesterday didn't mention the exact day, and so that might have thrown some people off. So that might be part of the reason why there's less people in the group, but that's all right. I want to switch back to the man's face here. Just move my Kindle over to that side and see if we can pull up his face. Let's see if I can find a nice flat brush. Lean back here and see if we can find them that will work. I want something that's going to be, yeah, this will be workable here. This is like a, I think this is a 3/8. So that'll work just fine. So I'm going to take some of this color here that I established, and I'm going to just place that within that area of his face, just to enrich the skin tones a little. That's just this kind of orangish, not orange, but I mean it's got an orangish tint. So again, you're looking at raw umber dark and naphtha red and raw sienna. That's pretty much the mix I used for this. And again, that's thinned out with matte medium, and I'm just brushing it into the side of the face. And I'm going to darken as well. Let's move this over if we can. This picture is the original reference photo. I'm just going to kind of feather it over here. And I can't make it look just like that because he is a little younger. His face has to have a little bit more I don't know, suppleness to the skin, not as much wrinkles. Not that there's a lot of wrinkles there, but there's a little bit. Looks like the skin tone here is going to be a little bit cooler. That skin tone that's by his upper lip area. And that makes sense because, you know, he might have some whiskers or something, but it's just, even without that, it's going to be a little cooler. So I have kind of a raw umber dark mix. It's the same color, but with more raw umber dark. And I'm just placing that then below his nose and above his lip area. And we'll add a little bit of shading right here as well. So I can see that in the picture. Maybe a little bit of a shadow right here too, coming down from his cheeks. Now, his visor is casting a shadow, but it's a diffused shadow because, you know, it's probably cloudy, misty. So I'm not sure exactly how far the shadow is going to go over his eyes. See his sunglasses on in the original reference photo, and the client didn't want the sunglasses showing. So I have to kind of guesstimate how far that might go. Just to have it a little bit diffused. So it's not an exact replica of their original photo, and so that does give it a little more leeway, trial and error process. I have to kind of see how it's going to look, if it looks good. What I'm going to do now is add a little bit of naphthyl red, or actually organic red orange, and I want to add some pink to his lips, and just a nice light glaze. Place that in. Yeah, that does add something to it. This is just a process. There's going to be a lot more layers to add in. I want to add that same color to his ear, because ears generally tend to be kind of pinkish as the light shines through that very thin flesh. And so I'm going to add a little bit to that as well. There we go. And now I'm just going to scan and see where else I can use these colors. I might want to work a little bit on his hands, but there the color shouldn't be quite as pink. So I'm going to add some raw sienna to it. And we'll just go in and add some shading in a few different areas. Hopefully you can see that. I don't want to be in the way here of the camera. I think you can still see a little bit what's going on. And let's see if we have any questions. Looking back at the chat. Nope, no questions right now. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in. It's going to be a lot easier to get your questions answered today with the lower attendance, but I'm just going to keep on painting here. Just like a little feedback though, just to see, is everything making sense what I'm showing you guys? Are you able to see it? If you can, if you want to just give me a yes or a thumbs up, if you can do that, that would be great. Okay, I'm going to just darken in on this side of his fingers a little bit, and just tapping in that color very gently. I'm kind of holding the brush more at the end so I can get a little more, I don't know, freedom with it. On this side, I'm going to darken this knuckle, because again, the light is coming from the right side, shining down. And so this side is going to get a little darker. I'm going to darken in this side as well. His knuckle, I think his thumb is catching some light underneath a little bit, and then up into here. And I'm just basically fading that out very, very gently. Okay, so, I'm gonna grab something here really quick. What I was gonna do is, I was gonna show you how to do the blending technique where you add a couple layers. So I'm going to do that. I want to set that up quick. If you remember that from last week, I forgot to show you guys, but this is, a segmented glaze. I'm just going to do this on a piece of paper, and we'll let this dry. So you can see that right here. It's very light tone. But I just want to show you how, I do one blending technique using the glazing technique to build up gradations, to build up transitions from dark values to lighter values. I'll let that dry really quick, and then we'll keep on painting and show you that. All right. Thanks for the feedback there. Kim says yes, and she also mentions, let me just go over here and see these questions because I can't read them from a distance. I get frustrated when using many photo references. Yeah, it is a little bit of a challenge because you're trying to mix and match different color and lighting, and yeah, it's a little tricky for sure. But it's almost inevitable that you're going to have to do that as a commissioned portrait artist. As much as possible. I mean, I try to actually set up a photo shoot for my clients if I can, because you can get a way better picture. If you've used a DSLR digital camera, you can take a photo outside. Almost always you can get better lighting than what most people get just snapping pictures. Especially if you have several faces together, it's tricky to put them together with different light sources. So if you can get everyone together in a group and do a photo shoot, yeah, you might have to actually charge a fee, to bring a camera and set up a photo shoot. But I don't think people will mind that if they understand the difference in the quality that you can achieve when you have a good reference photo to paint from. And then think about this too. If you're painting from a good reference photo with high quality lighting, detail, a good background, and that kind of thing, after you finish the painting, it's going to represent your skills better, because you're going to be doing the best portrait you can. And so you'll be able to put that in your portfolio, and with that you'll be able to get more commissions and higher quality commissions as well. So that's just a thought. That's something I'm trying to do in my own painting, is if the client can't produce a good photo and they live in the area, I try to get a photo shoot done. So, all right. Anyway, let's get back to this, and we're going to add some more shading to, work on her hand. I was working on his hands, and just going to add a little bit of color to this side, and then up around the knuckles a little bit. And it's a matter of kind of going back and forth between the two. Also, I'm going to add a little darkness underneath her chin, darken that neck area because that's mostly in shadow. And oh yeah, let's get this area too on the underside of his hand. And let's see what else we have. I have, for whatever reason, I don't know what happened here, but this has to get darker. Yeah, I don't know if it was. I think I made a mistake. I'll just be honest. I think I made a mistake. This shadow here for this walking pole or whatever. I don't know what you call those things for people that do hiking, but anyway, this pole here, the shadow that I put down here should actually be up there underneath his fingers. And for whatever reason, I didn't do that. So I'm going to just add a shadow here. And then I might have to adjust the shadow right there a little bit. But that is actually where it should be. So, because I have four fingers there and a thumb, so I want to make sure I have it in the right place. I think I just misinterpreted the photo when I was looking at it. Have you ever done that where you got so intent on painting somebody's details that you gave them 5 fingers instead of 4 fingers or something like that? I know I've done that before. I don't remember if I gave them 5 fingers, but I did something really strange where I totally was so focused on one detail. I remember what it was. Back in high school, I was in art class and I was drawing a picture of Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I was so intent on getting his face just right, and I don't think I actually sketched out the proportions. I just started drawing his eyes and his face and all the details. And I had his big, muscular arms and the whole deal. But his head was just huge in comparison to his body. And so he looked like a midget Arnold. It was funny. I don't know if have you guys ever done that before where you're focusing on a detail and then you just totally miss something else. Yeah, that's my confession for you. So anyway, I fixed that area right there. I think if I hadn't paid attention, I maybe could have given him 5 fingers and that wouldn't have been good. Definitely don't want him to be like the 5-fingered man in Princess Bride. I don't think he'd appreciate that. So anyway, I want to make sure he's anatomically correct and darken that area in. And then what I'll have to do is go back over it with a lighter color, with a little bit of white. And that's okay just to do that. Now, even though we're using the glazing technique, there is going to be some areas where it's going to be opaque, and that's okay. The glazing technique is not meant to confine you. It's just meant to free you up to be able to do some different things you normally can't do with opaque painting. All right, so anyway, let me show you this glazing technique. I was going to show you the how to do the blending and everything. So I'm just going to grab something to paint on. So one of the blending techniques, the main blending technique I use is what we call a segmented blending technique. And it means you have one layer down, and then what you're going to do is have another layer, and you can then paint over that first layer. Then you're going to bring it out further. So you should be able to see that. It built a little bit of a transition. I don't know if you can see that blending, but I went over the first layer and then I went past it a little bit. And by going past it, I darkened over the first layer because, the two added together makes it darker because they are translucent. You can see through them. And then this new layer that didn't have anything underneath it now is lighter because this portion here is just one layer, right? But this portion here is 2 layers. And so that's the segmented blending technique. I guess I kind of coined that name because I like to identify what I'm teaching. But with that, then you're able to build multiple gradations because you could then go ahead and add a layer just in this portion, and then you'd have 3 layers, and here you'd have 2, and here you'd have 1, and basically they could all be the same color, the same level of translucency, same amount of pigment, but because you're adding one on top of the other in certain places, strategic places that you know where they should go, you can develop a whole layer of blending and shading. And I do that all over the face, you know, well, not just the face, but, you know, especially the face when I'm painting, because we all want to get those skin tones and those gradual transitions between dark and light. And we like to see, you know, the smooth shading that really makes a portrait look realistic. And this is a great way to develop that. Now, that's just one blending technique. I have 5, but I just want to show that particular technique to you. And maybe that's something you can incorporate in your portraits if you do the glazing technique. So if you guys all understood the way I explained that, if you just want to give me a yes or a thumbs up or some kind of feedback, that would be great. So I always like to know if I'm teaching in a way that makes sense to you, in a way that's beneficial, that you can put it right into practice in your portrait techniques, you know, when you're painting. Okay, so Patty and Kim says yes. Mona, totally. All right, great. Awesome. Well, I'm going to continue on here. We have, maybe 15 minutes or so before we get to the top of the hour. And I'm going to shut it down for lunch, because right here where I live, it's going to be lunchtime soon. So I'm going to paint for another, I say 15 minutes. If you have any questions, though, just go ahead and put them in the chat. And in the last few minutes, I'll answer your questions. All right. So I was working on their face, and I could just kind of stick with that process. I'm going to add a little bit of shading to the side of his nose. So I'm going to take this mixture I have here that's a little bit cooler, maybe add it to this mixture that's a little warmer. It's more of an orangish look, and I'm just going to darken in on top of that previous layer. And I'm going to leave that for now. I really have to go very gently on their faces, because the value of their faces needs to be lighter than the background, and yet the background has to have quite a bit of luminosity with the trees. So I just have to be careful not to go too dark too fast. Yeah, I could go back and lighten it up, but I really want to do this with the glazing technique as much as possible, because that's what the client knows they know my artwork for that technique, and you know, I want it to really be vibrant within their home. Excuse me there, I just had to get some water. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to move this over, and let's shift over to her face a little bit more. Try to get this in the right spot. Now this lighting here might actually be closer to what we have in the original reference photo, but that smile is what I wanted for her face. I'm going to go take a little bit of alizarin crimson and add that to this mix that I've got with the raw umber dark, and I just want to darken in under her eyes just a little bit and get those wrinkles under the eyes, those concentric eyelid folds as they're called, and really make her look like she's smiling. There's some shading that has to happen here, bridging the edge of the mouth with the cheeks, that really will make it look like they're smiling. It's so important. The smile is shown not just in the shape of the mouth, but the puffiness of the cheeks. And that's almost more important than the shape of the mouth itself. So we really want to get that in there. And I want to make sure that this laugh line, or nasolabial fold as it's called, goes all the way up to her nose where it should go. And I want to really get the structure of her nose painted in well. So to do that, I have to darken in just on the sides a little bit.